Not bad. That's good for me. 6 minutes late, remembering to hit start on the recording. So we just got that formality out of the way. We'll get started with the business. Secretary, is there anything that you'd like to say to kick us off this month?
It's been a very brief amount of time between this and the last meeting. I think that there's been a lot going on. Other than I'm excited to hear about the work that you have done to date for the council and what our next steps are. I think we've got a couple of actions coming out of this meeting that are going to help us move our efforts and collective support along.
Thank you. I'm trying to bring up a couple of items to have prepared.
Do you want me to buy you a little bit more time?
Nope, I'm good. I was just trying to anticipate where I need to go next as far as presentation. So I'm going to bounce over here and share this. And can everybody see? Oops. And in slideshow mode. There. Everybody see that all right? So full agenda for this meeting. Since we're meeting every 2 months, that gives me plenty of time to do stuff and get it out there, hopefully. And I tried to, I think I was a day short of 2 weeks prior to the meeting, getting all the material distributed for review. If that was not enough time, please let me know for the future, and I will try and get that out earlier. But that was what I could this time get it cleaned up and tidied up and distributed. So hopefully that gives people enough time to do review in advance of the meeting. If it's an issue, just please let me know. One of the things that I wanted to do was the last meeting I put out a document. It's on the website, and we'll kind of touch on that in a minute when I go over the SharePoint site and the website review. But is there any, if you had a chance to look at it or went back and I also used a little bit of AI to do a summary of the meeting. I think it's summarized. Works pretty good. Our AI director said I could use it, so therefore I felt good. If there's anything that you would like noted, corrected, let me know now, and we will make note of it and include corrections for future. Okay. And if not, you can either put it in the chat or follow up with me. I'm going to now share browser. So one of the things that I wanted to do is I made assumptions that people were finding and familiar with what we have for the two resources. So I wanted to do a quick walkthrough. Either pause me, raise your hand, something, let me know if you have questions before we go too far into this. So what I'm showing now is if you go to the agency digital services site, so digitalservices.vermont.gov, under cybersecurity is the Cybersecurity Advisory Council public facing page. So you can see on the navigation, it's going to be under this menu here. On this, we have just a little bit of an overview about the council. Should have current membership. I think I made the most recent changes. Yep, James Lehman is on there for Attorney General's office. Then it goes down and it gives background. So if you're ever wanting to reference the enabling legislation, by all means, you can find it here. This is where we're doing our public meeting notices now that we have a regular cadence. So this is where I go out a couple weeks in advance, put the information. We have our long-term schedule here, but everybody should have placeholders from after the last meeting. I think I sent them out through at least September, maybe even the November meeting. Gives you information about where, and also the teams for anybody from the general public, because this is a open meeting. And I'm trying to keep it maintained with the current agendas that we have for each of the meetings. And then you can also find the recordings here. We have I can't remember what name it is. Agency Digital Services has a YouTube channel where we're uploading the recordings to. And then I also have this meetings recap document that I'm publishing to get this short version. We have a little bit of etiquette, and then the report that was approved with minor edits at the last meeting that was provided to the legislature at the end of January. So I just wanted to, like, if there's any questions, walk through that quickly, make sure you know what's out there, where you can go to find information over the court in between meetings. One of the things that I was going to show was in this document. I did not include it. I thought I had appended the summarize, but I did not. So I will do that moving forward. I was going to show something and it's not there. The other thing is, if there's any questions, moving right along. I'll just go fast so we can get through to the meat of the stuff. We also have the SharePoint site. This is where everyone that's a member, whether you're a state employee or not, has an account to participate. If you do not, Jason, I don't believe you are. I created a partner account. Oh no, you must. I think I saw you join with a partner account, so you must have one. If you would like access to this, let me know, and I will give you access to the working site of the council. Yep. I don't think so. The secretary was asking if anybody's had issues accessing it. I have not heard that. Has anybody had a problem? I'm seeing shakes to the negative, so meaning it's all good. If you've had issues, but by all means, you don't have to bring them up now. Reach out to me. I'll be glad to try and work through any issues. But this is part of our internal state SharePoint environment. That's why everyone has a partner account to gain access to it. It's got the front page is, you know, some things, the shortcuts, but the meat of what we have is under the documents right now. And I'm old school, right? I'm less about searching and tags, and I'm a little bit more like, you know, file folders and structure. So you'll find me using those types of things. I'm not like just put it all in there and I'll search for it with a tag some point down the road. So right now, meetings is the repository for all the documents that we're producing as part of the meetings, the presentations that we're using, and the recaps. Reports, this is where the legislative report went. The survey, if you have had a chance to review it, this is where that was located, if you used a direct link to access it. And then one of the topics that we have talked about is, or on today's agenda, is web resources. There's some things that we want to start putting out as like public information to start, I won't say drawing attention, but giving people something other than meeting minutes as a reason to visit the site, to start putting out helpful resources from a cybersecurity perspective. So those are what's in that. And then lastly is the high level documents, including membership, the enabling legislation. And I think I don't know if I walked through this at the first meeting or not, but the council plan, this is like the simple thing that I put together that's guiding my work on a day-to-day basis to keep this moving forward. So it's the structure by which I'm approaching it. And interestingly, before Christmas, I think I roughed out the outline, and I looked at it and I put some dates on it. And the most recent date deliverable was to have the second meeting by March 21st. So we're like one day ahead of my plan. 3 months in. I've never done that before, so I want to celebrate that. So I'm serious. I couldn't believe it. I was looking at it yesterday.
And on a part-time schedule.
Yeah. I got all that free time to actually think about what I want to do when I'm working. So is there any questions? I just wanted to walk through that, make sure there wasn't anything, any concerns, or if people had any questions about what information is available to them. All right. And again, just reach out if you do. And I'm going to go back here. So let's see. Moving right through our agenda. Questions, comments, walkthrough. All right. And I'm glad Michelle is here in person. So one of the things that I think I introduced at the first meeting was that, or maybe it was a discussion topic, I can't remember, but was kind of like establishing what's going to be the language that we use to invoke, so we're consistent in going into executive session for any kind of sensitive material that we need to discuss. And I put forward, I think in the email invite, my idea based on some information that David Kaiser had provided from his team around references to things that they use when not sharing information, public records exemption rules and things like that. So I crafted something, and General Counsel Anderson looked at it and said, you know, you really got what you need in your enabling legislation, right? I mean, it covers probably the majority of things that we would want to concern ourselves with about entering executive session. And so I'm like, that's really pretty cool if they got it covered for us. So this is other than if you'd look for it, this wasn't sent out with the material, so I waited till today. But what I wanted to do was make sure everyone was comfortable that this was what we were going to lean on if we needed to go into executive session. So what I would like for folks is to take a couple minutes, read through it, and then let's talk through, are there any, do you anticipate something that might be missing or not covered by this as to why we would want to invoke executive session? So I'll stop talking. Give another minute or a few seconds, then we'll start with Eric. Okay, go ahead, Eric.
Well, the only thing that comes to mind is that as a rule, we don't generally disclose what vendors we use or what equipment we use, just in the course of general conversations about our infrastructure. So I wouldn't say, oh, we use this firewall or that firewall in a public discourse, just because that sort of exposes our attack surface, right? That's a general thing we try to adhere to. And I don't know if other folks do that too, but if there was any kind of discussions we wanted to have about specific vendors or specific services, that might be something that needs to happen in executive session so that attackers can't figure out exactly what we're using.
Yeah, that's a good point, right? We don't want to narrow it down for them so they already know where to start. That's a good point, Eric. Sue.
Yeah, I was just going to reiterate what Eric said, is I think we need to have something beyond just public safety that includes the confidentiality requirements of each organization.
Are the confidentiality requirements based on your proprietary information or on security, for security reasons?
I think it could be a multiple of things. It could be for, proprietary reasons. I'm not suggesting this is specific to us. I'm just saying that we should consider that some organizations don't want to release proprietary information. Some organizations, like what Eric said, don't like releasing information that they can consider what could be used by malicious actors. Some organizations don't want to release information because they're not allowed to. I'm thinking of Erica here. They're not allowed to for certain sector reasons, those types of things.
Okay.
The statute for executive session specifically lists the categories of things that can be discussed in executive session and not publicly. So it may not include all the private sector things you want to consider. So maybe we don't discuss those at all. with the committee if that's going to be an issue. But if there's anything in particular, you can always send it to us and we can take a look and see if there'd be a good exemption for that or a reason to go into executive session for that type of information. It's pretty limited actually, but public safety is the big one you can always lean on.
The public safety piece does become a critical component to what we're considering critical infrastructure.
Yes, David.
When you get a chance.
No, go right ahead.
Okay. So I'm wondering if section 2 is sufficient to cover information sharing agreements with entities like MSISAC, with CISA, or even any other federal entity that's operating under, say, FOU. How would that get looked at, Michelle?
We're talking about documents then, or discussion of documents?
Data, documents, policy. I mean, it calls out policy kind of, right? But a lot of incident response information gets shared through MSISAC,
Right.
which is indicators of compromise,
Yep.
whatever.
Yeah, I don't know the exact, we'd have to look at it, specifically to each thing we're going to discuss, but that's good to be aware of because we can almost always find something. We just have to make sure we cite the right reason for going to the executive session and that we can kind of do. We can do it on the fly, but it's better if we have a little advance notice, what we think we're going to talk about.
Yeah, I'm wondering if could we consider, Michelle, adding, I don't know how to phrase this. I'm trying to think like Eric's example, right? Eric and Sue's like, detailed technical specifications for a cybersecurity environment or something like that, right? So that we're talking about that because it's not just hardware, it could be software, right? It could be, what are you using for endpoint detection solutions, right? So, or, what do you do, how are you doing, application firewalling for remote users? I mean, it could be a lot of different technical things, but wanting to, because I'm not sure if we could find something there. I keep going through my head. I don't think we could find something there that would cover wanting to talk about a specific technology solution, right? Because it's not a protocol, it's not an incident response, it's not a standard.
I would take those as sort
And
of
it's not testimony.
general categories, discussions of, so I think that might standards, protocols, incident responses. You could fall back on the more general one if you wanted, records exempt from access to public records.
I'm wondering if just inserting evaluations, recommendations, or discussion of cybersecurity technology, standards, protocols, right? That we just call out the tech as being a specific part of that we would consider in the discussions.
Let me think about how we
Okay.
do that.
So
What are, I'm sorry, go ahead.
you're drawing a line between the abstract conceptual and the application. Is that kind of the way you're thinking of it?
Well, I think that would be up for us when we want to enter executive session, right? And so what we would have is then say, well, what we want to get into is the details of someone's cybersecurity environment. So we're going to invoke the discussions related to cybersecurity technical, right? And then that's what we would reference as to why we went into it, right? So what I'm saying is if we wanted to, like in Eric's instance, right, if for some reason we were going to talk about, because one of the members had a really bad experience with a certain vendor or technology, right? The technology actually contributed to a compromise or something like that. It would be nice to be able to talk about it, but not in a way that was broadcast.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I'm trying to think of how to fold that in there. So do other folks have thoughts or something for us to consider? And I think what I'll take as a takeaway is to work with Michelle, maybe to see if we need to bring forth an alternative version for the next meeting for folks to consider. Because we don't have anything imminent that we need to invoke the executive
We could think through some hypotheticals and what we might use, what might be
Yep.
applicable to protect them.
Is everyone okay with that? We'll shape it a little more and bring it back to you at the next meeting. May, when hopefully we won't be seeing snow squalls.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other items that you think we should consider that would not be addressed here that we haven't talked about? Okay. If something comes to you, by all means, email me after the fact. I'd be glad to put that on the scenarios that we're going to consider to make sure we have some language that supports it. All right. Now we're getting to the primary agenda item for this meeting, which is the cybersecurity survey. I'm going to stop sharing and go to the survey. Hear that. And I'm going to see if Captain Lone has not joined us yet. I would just say I met with him last week, and then I had a follow-up meeting with his team at the Vermont Information Center yesterday. And I was agonizing over how we were going to distribute this survey because well, people are aware, but there's like over 3,000, isn't it? I'm sorry, I'm going to probably misquote it, Joseph, but like 3,000 in water and wastewater operators in the state of Vermont, or some significant number like that.
Yeah, there's about 3,000 water systems in Vermont, depending upon what you want to consider versus public versus private. But there's about 3,000 of them.
Thank you. And so that was just one sector, right? And then we start talking about how do we get to the hospitals and how do we get to all the electric utilities? You know, there's a lot of local, small municipal utilities and phone companies, and fortunately, the VIC, the Fusion Center for the state of Vermont, the IC, has listservs for all the different critical infrastructure areas. And I think for sake of consistency, so we have a way of repeating this, we're going to use those listservs as a means of distributing the survey. So before we got into the survey, I wanted to ask Erica, are you a recipient of are you on the VIC listservs where you get information from the Vermont Information Center around things related to your industry?
I do, yes.
You do. Okay, good. I know I talked to Nate. He's not here today. He does. Joe Duncan, do you get the information from the VIC related to water?
Yes, we do.
You do.
Yes. Yep.
Excellent. Eric,
I will say that it comes and goes at times, depending upon who's running the VIC. It seems to, but we currently do.
Yeah. Okay, good. Well, that's my current is what I'm after, right? Because that means if we use that to get the survey out there, we know it's going to be at least hitting on a portion of the population that provides those services. So thank you. Eric, do you get those information? Yeah.
Yeah, we get them.
Okay. Excellent. I'm trying to think of who else is on that. Sue.
I am
Is that
not
something
familiar with
you
that,
do?
no.
Okay. I have a email today getting all the different critical infrastructure sectors that they have listservs for. So I'll look and see what would be likely the one that you would best match up with, and see if I can get you in touch with them about getting on that. Because I want everybody I want all the membership of the council to be covered so that when we're distributing the survey, we know that it got out there successfully and stuff like that. Did I miss anybody? Let's think. The only ones that might not would be the guards. So, Colonel Kreider, are you at all subscribed to any of you get information from the Vermont Information Center, the Fusion Center?
I do not.
You know, how about yourself, Lieutenant Colonel Gallipo?
I don't personally, but I have a member of my team that's on, he's our anti-terrorism program coordinator, and he talks to the Vic pretty regularly. I just don't know if he gets regular updates. I'm pretty sure he does, though.
I will at least look into it for Sue, for you. Colonel Kreider, would you like to be, since you're monitoring this on behalf of the general, would you like to be added to an appropriate list to monitor?
Sure, I'd be happy to give it a try, and if we find that maybe the majority of the information doesn't pertain to my field, we could adjust it, but I'd be happy to give it a try and see what it's all about.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, they assure me they try not to use it for spam purposes, right? They try to make sure it stays meaningful, and so people don't just get clutter in their inbox and tend to ignore it. So I'm hopeful that that's the case. I see Erica nodding, so that's good. Erica, do you receive their quarterly Viper report?
Some quarters, not all quarters. I think the last one I got was February. So probably I got it for this quarter. I don't know that they release them every quarter. And I'll add on to that the volume that comes from them is not high, and it tends to be useful and relevant information. So it's one of the ones that I actually read all of them, right?
Well, I think we found a good channel. Thank you for that testimonial, Erica. I did not pay her to say that. Eric Helmuth, do you see the Viper quarterly?
Yeah, we just started getting it, and I'll second what Erica said. It's relevant. There's good tidbits in there. Plus, the logo is particularly good. If you're gonna subscribe to it for any reason, just checking out that logo is it's awesome.
Yeah. It's reminiscent. At first when I saw it, all I could think was the old Dodge Viper car hood logo. It was reminiscent of that.
Yeah.
Joe Duncan, do you receive that report also?
I'm trying to picture exactly what it is. We get a ton of different reports, and I'm trying to remember if that is one that I do get or not.
Picture a snake's head on the cover. I think February was late January, early February was the most recent. And it's around both physical and cybersecurity for critical infrastructure.
Oh yeah.
Like a quarter of the report.
Yep.
Okay.
I apologize. I don't picture the snake offhand. I gotta pay more attention to the front page. I'm skipping right to the content.
Well, it caught my eye anyway when I first saw it. I found it interesting, but the reason I brought it up is that they've agreed to include, the next one's going to be going out in April. I think that's the cadence. And so they agreed to include an article on what we're doing, or a piece of it's going to go in there. So those that get it, I'm going to try and put together an overview of what the council is doing and talk about the survey that's coming out. So that's going to be like the precursor to the different sectors of the survey that'll be coming. And then we'll release the survey. Well, actually, we plan on timing it so that right in the report, if they want, there will be the link to do the survey, but then we'll have a follow-up to each of the specific sectors after the report, after that Viper quarterly report goes out. So Sue, Colonel, Lieutenant Colonel, those will start to make more sense to you. We'll get you plugged in the right places. It's informative, bless you. And so, okay, good. Any questions on that? Oh, thank you, Erica, for sharing the image.
Yeah.
And now where are we moving on to? All right, let me know when you start seeing the draft survey, please. And if I need to zoom in or change anything for you to see it easier? All right. So, I know Captain Lone made this comment. This is what initiated a follow-up and where we're going. So the initial comment from him was around what the VIC has for the distribution list, contact information for critical infrastructure and key resources, I believe is what the KR stands for. So I have that list. So we'll be using that as the distribution for the survey. Starting right out, we'll take over. We'll start with just the survey administration section. Other than that comment, raise your hand, just come off mute or whatever if you had any kind of concerns with what we've presented as being the methodology and approach to conducting the survey and then the scoring after the fact and analysis. Did you say, David? Okay. Moving right along, I guess we took a good stab at that one. All right, I'm gonna ask questions. Did anyone have concerns that we were gonna conduct this anonymously? Or want to know the reasoning behind that? No, okay. And then we may, oh, I'm sorry, was there a comment? Okay. And this is one, Michelle, we need to consider because the analysis, I'm going to see it, right? Because I'm going to be the survey administrator. And so I'm going to roll it up. I will probably work with Josiah to do the heat map work to kind of help us hone in what the council will see is the heat maps. But we may want to be able to, in executive session, talk about maybe some of the specific comments. We just need to make sure that that would be covered so that if we wanted to go into, because there is the last item in the survey is like a free form comment field, right? And so there may be some meaningful things we want to talk about, but not want to talk about that because they share something that could be a potential risk.
Yeah.
So.
And the heat map itself, something you want to protect, right?
I think we need to wait and see what it looks like as to how I would like to keep it protected to the council to start. That's the plan, but we may, depending on what it shows,
Okay.
I could see it possibly going to something like Dry Talk, but maybe that would be also an executive session.
Yeah.
So we've got to see
You
the
would have to make
results.
that determination that it was hazard to public safety. I just.
Yeah.
thought
I mean,
that
that-
might be one.
A lot of it has to do with how large the population size is for a given sector, right? If we get 2 responses, you might be able to, and there's only like, let's pick on hospitals, right? Nate's not here, so he can't defend himself. I think there's 14 hospitals that'll end up getting surveyed in the state of Vermont. And a number of them are part of the UVM health network, right? So, Middlebury area, Central Vermont, the medical center. So 3 of them. So now you're down to like 112. You could probably start to figure out who somebody is by that population size based on a response. So, yeah, I think it's going to be how we start to look at it and digest it will tell us to what level we feel comfortable sharing it without putting anyone at risk. We have questions. I think James had his hand up first.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
just
Jim.
I think what you were just saying may have addressed my question, but I was wondering, to the extent these are anonymous, will we still be able to identify them with each sector? And it sounds like we'll be able to at least know which sector a response comes from, right? Even if we don't know who.
Correct. We're going to issue them, there will be a survey by sector so that we will be able to roll up on a sector by sector basis. But still try and keep it anonymous.
Sounds good.
Erica.
So my comment was sort of perceived skew, right? So if I get this survey and I happen to be wholly unprepared and I'm going to show up in the poor category or the red category, I probably would not submit this survey if it were me, right? So I think we need to talk about, or at least acknowledge, that this methodology might skew us towards a more yellow-green situation where we really might be skewing red, right? So throwing that out there.
No, that is very important to keep in mind, because that's one of the reasons why I've thought about and proposed doing it anonymously, is so that maybe even if you are red and you know it can't be traced back because you're one of the 3,000 operators of a water system, you're not so bashful about being honest. But I think what we're going to have to do is, I've been trying to work to understand, I've been telling how many people are how many water systems are there, how many hospitals. I know what N is, the number of each in the sector. So at the very least, we'll know how many responses we get. So we'll be able to say that this only represents a 25% response rate or a 70% response rate. And then I think from there, we can try and at least infer if it's looking green and yellows, well, we could probably say that the 70% that didn't respond were probably reds, right? So there will be more orange. But, that'll be all of how we shape the information, is to make sure that we're framing it that way, right? To understand what the sample size is out of a total. Good point. Any other questions or comments before we scroll down? Go ahead, Secretary. That was a deep breath for just a normal one.
Well, given that there's a point structure that's cumulative in the 34 questions, not listing the point values based on answer will help with those, the challenges with or the concerns, right? With, is my answer going to give me a higher rating or not?
Oh.
And so
if we don't tell everybody the scoring is 3, 2, 1, 0, working from left to right,
correct.
it might help us get a little less bias.
They won't game the system.
Yep.
Well, some of them are kind of, well, at least one is kind of a little bit humorous. So I think people will probably infer good to bad based on what I gave them for selections.
As far as what the weighted value of points, that visual will help to give a preferred answer versus a real answer. And so we may want to just look to adjust that a little bit.
Okay.
If you know the lotto numbers, you're going to play the ones you know.
No, true.
Everyone's green. That's so great.
Well, so this is
right.
So this is a good point, right? And does the council think we may be able to address some of that concern if there was like a framing up front that says that the results of this will influence, the development of cybersecurity programs for everyone to benefit from, could influence, funding potential, right? Rattle off some of the things that this could lead into. Would that help, do you think, people being honest or not? I shouldn't say it's not dishonest, right? But I mean, yeah, being a little bit more open and sharing their true status versus Joe.
We definitely find that in the drinking water world, that especially when something is coming from the state or from a government entity, that if you're not stating your purpose of it, they assume it's in some way to slap your hand. So framing it that this is meant to help you and create programs and funding to put you in a better position than you are today is, in my opinion, critical.
Okay,
Feedback.
thank you. But yeah, I will, because we're gonna go down a different path and how this is gonna get distributed, the letters that I had drafted for consideration really don't have the same role now. So I'll have to go back to that's good. I'll make sure to incorporate that. This is not meant to be punitive. That will be the opening sentence.
We'll have our communication strategy.
Yeah.
It should be
It would have not.
You don't think?
But we'll engage Chelsea
Yes,
and
there
have
you
her
go.
help us.
So now we're gonna get into, there's no more, we're gonna get into the different sections of the survey. I, at times, struggled with this because I know we have some like really small critical infrastructure operators that are probably running Windows 95 boxes somewhere in a key infrastructure position. And I also know we have the Vitals and the UVM health networks that have a really pretty robust cybersecurity approach. And to try and write a survey that covered like pretty much that spectrum, right, of develop to no cyber program and do it in a way that was generalized. And also in the back of my head, I was trying to make it so it was repeatable, right? That it didn't have to be changed, that we could do this every couple of years to try and measure progress, and that the survey would still be relevant, right? The questions would be relevant. They're not dated, right? We're not going to ask them, you know, do you, I don't know, have you banned all Chinese video cameras or something like that at this point? Guys use TikTok routinely. 2 years is going to be a bunch of other things that are a concern. So I'm absolutely looking for feedback too about keeping that in mind. Was there some things missed? So in first section, governance and leadership was trying to, you know, ascertain how the organization looks at cybersecurity, right? And so I'm going to start with the comments here from James, and then we'll open it up to others. So James, the scored left or right as most use points. Are we sure that an answer of other here should always be worth fewer points than annual? Example. So for those who are reading that can't read the comment because it's micro on your screen, what James is saying is there's really anything outside of, yeah, that's a good question. Because you're right, other would be something better. It could be better than annually, not necessarily worse. And we've got it based on the scoring as implied as that, you know, annually is the best you could do.
I would just recommend that you modify that. So, biannually or multiple years, never, or no, we don't do this. So just break out the categories so that they have a little bit of flexibility in there.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe like
Perhaps
more
at least
frequently.
annually,
At least
Oh, right.
annually, yeah.
At least annually, yes.
Yeah.
at minimum
Okay.
annually.
So how would we want to phrase this then?
Other could be as needed. Or,
Or just less
Well,
than
oh,
annual?
that's vague, sorry.
Yeah, less than annually.
I was gonna say less than annually. And then
Yeah.
never
Yeah.
and NA are sort of the same thing, right? Because if it's not applicable, you're not reviewing it.
Right.
It's never. Yeah, okay, so this is where you're gonna learn a lot about me. The engineer in me that likes, OCD, like structure and stuff.
Ones and
Once I
zeros.
landed on a schema, I was trying to fit all the responses to the schema. And
How about
so,
more than annually, at least annually, less than annually, and then never?
Yeah.
Or NA, but I think NA and never are duplicative.
Otherwise, you're giving a point.
You're right.
so,
Yeah, because
You're giving a point
NA
to
and
never.
never are the same.
well,
Well, right now, you're giving a point to never.
Or NA might be, what's security policies?
Cyber.
this is my logic, right? So the question before that, is there an established cybersecurity policy? So if you go yes, so then, well, you've got it, but nobody's ever reviewed it. So never is better than NA because you say NA when you don't even have policies, right? One says we did a one and done and we've never revisited it versus we've never done it. And so that's where I was trying to distinguish between
There is no policy.
never and NA.
You make that more
Well,
clear, just
so-
say there is no policy.
So you're leading, in my opinion, because if they don't have one, then no. And when do you review them? Never, because we don't have any. So I think that you can
Okay,
probably get
all
rid
right,
of
I
NA.
can see how you, or I can see how you.
Either get rid of NA, change it to there is no
You're
policy.
leading the witness, counsel.
Or,
I'm not
that's
good.
if you want to give a point for never reviewing.
It's okay here.
Well, we also asked the question above about whether or not there is an established policy.
Right,
Yeah, so we're saying,
more than annually.
ANNUA.
what's that?
Nothing, just telling you how to.
Thank you. We're gonna start calling you grammar.
Yes,
We know that's your favorite.
it is.
Okay. And then James also commented, does senior leadership acknowledge cybersecurity as a priority? And similarly comment is occasionally is more often than when it's in the news. Is it clear that occasionally is more often than when it's in the news? Yeah, that was a little bit of me like trying to be tongue in cheek there, right? About, there's people, I don't know, there's probably everybody in the healthcare space and given the United Healthcare thing that's really worried about it right now that wasn't so worried about it in January.
Good point.
Right, the news cycle has a tendency at times to make people awareness spike.
So based on that description, occasionally makes me assume that it does have some level of regular occurrence. When it's in the news, it's reactive response. So only when there's a problem. And so if it's reactive response, then it should score lower than, yes, regularly, occasionally, regularly.
I think maybe something just like always, often, rarely, never might get at what we're looking for here in a way that might come across a little clearer.
That's a good
I
feedback.
like that. Does anybody have issues with? Although I did like when it's in the news.
That's true.
We have, do you have any feedback on that change?
That's perfect.
Excellent. Good comments, James. Thank you, everyone.
You're missing a comma.
Oh,
Yeah.
It's okay.
Wow. Now I'm seeing you.
That's an important comma too.
Yeah, this is the last thing you want is an engineer to be doing wordsmithing in front of a bunch of people. All right. So before we leave governance and leadership, did anybody else have any other comments, feedback, thoughts on that section? Excellent. Moving right on, risk management. I don't see any comments posted here. Any questions, concerns from folks that reviewed? Didn't by chance make comments. I gave people the opportunity to bring the thoughts with them to the meeting, so. Just run through this quickly. All right,
To that last question,
yes, sir.
do you have cyber insurance in process and planned? I feel like could potentially do the same. Would that be an opportunity to add a point of had versus like they used to but got rid of for some reason? I know at least in some more of the state conversations, the cost benefit analysis there is more of like self-insuring, or basically it's just not worth the cost having. So
So what are we after in the response? What do we really want to know?
thinking if they have some kind of an insurance plan, and maybe if there's two of those options could be considered the same, is there an opportunity for someone to acknowledge that they went down that path of planning and process of going through having cyber insurance or not?
But the answer would still be no.
Yes,
Right.
but I think that there's a difference between having had it and going through that process of calculation of should I more or less be is the benefit there to us versus not having approached going through it at all?
Yeah, let me, Eric, your thoughts.
My thoughts are just on another one of those points. So if you guys want to finish the discussion on that one, we can
Okay.
come to mine. Yeah.
So to answer the secretary's question, the reason I have this question incorporated is not to create a honeypot so that if people can get this data, they know who's got cyber insurance and to go after them. It was it feels like cyber insurance, the acknowledgement of it is like on your maturity journey of a cybersecurity program, right? People that are not paying attention to cyber are not going to have insurance. They're not going to have talked about it. They're not going to have planned it. It's not on their radar. Versus, you don't think so?
No, to your point, there are even state level entities in cybersecurity that have decided to self-insure because they don't see the point risk reward on the cyber insurance side. New Hampshire, I believe.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, I know we've talked about it too, right? I mean, when your premiums start equaling 2 years or two premiums equal one benefit payout, that starts to become a bitter pill to swallow.
Where you get your hands tied on incident response, where more or less the other entities are told to stay away.
Yeah. And like sometimes the cyber coach can be helpful, sometimes not.
Well, and you can pick and choose if you don't go through an insurance policy,
Yeah.
which of those benefits you want to directly have on contract available.
Erica, is your hand up referencing cyber insurance discussion?
Yeah, so I think a good compromise, I understand all the points being spoken. I think a good compromise is yes, in process / planned, because we can sort of lump those intents as the same. No, as in no, we don't, or self-insured. And I don't know how you rank them from 3 to 1, right? But that way you acknowledge the assumption of risk that you're taking by not having it.
Yep.
So I would rank it there, right? Because you're still carrying something, what you've acknowledged it. You may choose to be self-insured, right? You've got the aspect that you can do it. Okay. I still think the state should go that route. I'm still advocating for a captive insurance. Captive insurance, we roll on our buildings, and then our buildings, which are lower risk assets, cover our cyber risk. Laughing at me, that's a great idea.
I am smiling in reaction at the people laughing at.
Should yes,
Anyway,
yes,
so-
yes, yes, private or yes, third party and then self-assured,
Oh, okay. That's a good way to distinguish third party.
just because, you know,
Look at JK. Nice.
I'm useful.
Is third party one of those hyphenated ones?
Yeah.
Okay.
Grammarly.
I don't use Grammarly. It wasn't that long. Eric, Mr. Helmut, back to you. What was it in that area that you wanted to discuss?
Oh, let's see. Mitigating risks. I think, risk management strategy. How frequently do you review and update your risk management strategy? The second one down. That's going to run into the same thing where if you're doing better than annually,
Yep.
because some organizations are doing it continuously. So
we should probably, for consistency's sake, right?
yeah.
That way we're also not creating confusion when people are doing the survey because we ask similar questions but present them with a different suite of responses. So thank you. Good call. Any others on this section? No, we'll jump down to asset management. All right, we'll start with James's comment. Is it obvious what is meant by technology? Is age of the oldest piece of technology a good metric for measuring cybersecurity? Every place surveyed has a 10-year-old printer. Is that something that should ding them?
Maybe.
Yeah, is it attached to the network?
Isn't 10 years young for a printer?
Should
Where
we
is
say
it?
critical asset instead?
Okay, rant.
Critical
Why is it
asset
when you
is
go to
better.
buy a vehicle? Why is it when you go to buy a vehicle, those financial people are still using dot matrix printers? Right. You ever seen that? It's like zzz, 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 the old Epsons. It's like, this is crazy. Absolutely crazy. But anyway, so those are good questions. And so this one was highlighted. Anything that was highlighted in here. So I'll give a little bit of background. What's her name? Tanium's president for risk.
Yeah.
Julia Grunwald. So there's a cybersecurity vendor, Tanium. Some of you may be familiar with. Their actual head for international, whatever it is, president for their risk practice is lives in Heinsberg. And I've met her in the past, and she actually agreed to come down. I did not share this with her digitally, but we walked through it, and I was like, okay, I'm going to pick your brain. Give me some thoughts on this survey. And the ones that were highlighted in here were things that she said maybe is things to consider. So that's why they're highlighted. They weren't part of the original that I had put together. They were feedback from her. I thought they were worth considering. So that's why they're in here. We don't have to include them. If everybody, it's thought to pull them out is the better thing to do.
I think
her
we should add
reasoning-
decades to some of the.
Well, her reasoning was if you're talking about some not so advanced entities that are doing this, they may not be able to tell you the answer to the other things, but they can sure as heck tell you that the PC running their SCADA system is 15 years old. Right? Because it's a gateway.
I hear you. I think Sue is right on the technology, and obviously James as well on let's build some parameters around the question specifically, because it is something connected to the network. Is it something that is running system operations? And then as far as the year span, and we have systems that are 50 years old.
I know.
So, and it would be important that, if I was answering this, I'd want to say, yeah, 50 is the range, or anything in the 5 to 10-year range is about average for anything what we would consider new in state government. So I do agree defining a little bit more, because folks are responding to this who have not been in these meetings and not knowing what we're talking about, and that would add some clarity.
Mr. Furlan. Oh,
Eric was ahead of me.
Erica. I thought it was Eric Ford. I'm sorry. I'm conflating my membership. My apologies. I don't know if Eric or Erica was first. Erica, go ahead.
I think Eric was first, but I'll go because it's quick. The other part with this question, the difficulty is I might have 2-year-old infrastructure and that's still well and good and under warranty, and I'm gonna get less points for that than brand new infrastructure. And like, for example, my average, recycle for hardware is in that 4 to 5 years, and it's still under warranty. It's still good. All of that should be equally valued. I understand, like, when we start to get 6 to 10, like, there starts to be a concern, but 1 to 4 is just ducky, in my opinion.
No, I agree. Yep. Eric.
Yeah, similar comment around the time frame. I mean, I think the main thing is are you running something that's end of life, right? Like, is it hardware that's end of life, or is it a OS that's end of life? That's what we would want to probably flag if people are willing to admit that.
What? Thank you. Joe.
What I was going to say is, I guess from an asset management standpoint, it's an interesting one because we always look at, and I know we had talked about this, so I'm kind of possibly taking back what you and I had talked about, Sean. But the just because it's old doesn't make it bad. And what is it that it is doing? What's the function of that technology? What's its accessibility from a cybersecurity standpoint? Is it being kept up to date even though it's old? Those are all interesting questions in my mind that maybe not necessarily just because it's old makes it bad. So I guess the point of what you're trying to get to and how you're trying to rank or what you're trying to give points to makes a difference in my mind. That age might not just be the sole factor that differentiates whether or not you have something that puts you at a risk.
Thank you. When I look at the question, I struggle to see how it's going to give us any more meaningful data when compared to the other questions, right? Is it a truly valuable data point? And because for all the points everyone's made, right? It's like, you really need context, right? It's like, well, it's this thing, but it's air gapped. So if it's air gapped, is it okay because it's 6 years old? I don't know if we're going to be able to get something from this that's going to give us value. So that's why I guess my thought is to just pull it out, because I'm not really sure the confusion it'll cost the respondents is worth any kind of information we could glean from it. Anybody feel strongly we should keep it? Say it that way.
In its current state, no.
Okay. I see some head shaking. I think if in the future we want to get into a little bit more detail, maybe something like that can be a part of it, but now it never existed.
Do you have any questions that are sort of their opinion of things? Like, do you consider your software, your hardware, your cyber systems to be up to date or out of date? Are these all just, do you do this or that?
No, there's not really any opinion ones. Because it ends up being like self-assessing, right? And so you get 500 responses, you get 500 different perspectives on what's good. So, any other questions or comments on the asset management one? I gotta get going. Right, all right. Access control. You enforce strong password policies, including regular password changes. Is this good policy? I've heard otherwise. This is from James.
And to be clear, that's specifically
Yes.
about requiring regular password changes, not strong password policies.
Yes. Yeah, right, because passphrases and multi-factor authentication have pretty much, everybody says now it's pointless to do like password changes, right? Only change them when you know you've had a compromise. That's kind of becoming the standard guidance, right? Especially if you're using passphrases and multi-factor. So this is like an old school question, right? When I wrote it, I struggled with this because I'm like, this is really implying, you know, like the state of the way things were, say, 5 years ago, right? That, you know, when a minimum of 8 characters for your password was, you know, that was your policy minimum, and then you wanted to like 90-day turnover on changing them. And so I'm good with, I don't know if that second half adds anything or if we just ask folks, do they enforce strong password policies, period? Because we asked multi-factor below that. I'm seeing some nods. Anybody take exception to striking the second half of that? Excellent. Consider it like I never even had the idea. And thank you, James, for the diligent review and thoughtful comments. This is one that I had included. This was out of that, kind of came out of that discussion with Julia I referenced earlier, which was, do you centrally manage all of your user accounts? And this was an interesting one, right? Because the scenario we were talking through, right, was the, whoever it is, right, small municipal electric utility that, you know, has, some of the people have Gmail accounts, right? They have just their own created Google account to do stuff. Some are running out of Office 365. Some are, you know, there's a server in a back room that runs a local install of Exchange, you know, and so it was trying to get to that, but I don't know if that's really meaningful at this point. Because I'm not sure it's a data point that helps us like really determine maturity. I'm going to look at Mr. Kaiser for thoughts. Deep thoughts. Deep thoughts. Oh, well, you're deep thinking. Eric has got his hand up.
I mean, I guess the one thing that comes to mind is like centrally managed, like single sign-on type of stuff, you know. So like if you have a 365 and your has that set up to link to Salesforce for single sign-on, you know, that's kind of a best practice if possible, right? Once you manage your cloud services a little better. But maybe that's too much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
I'm
to
not
a certain
feeling-
extent, this question could be interpreted by people in a variety of different ways. So if you want, I question whether it's really going to add value at this point, but if it is, it's got to be more defined what centrally manages. Some people might say, yeah, one guy manages all the passwords. Is that what you meant? Versus somebody else is thinking SSO.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
a third person
Or
says
they
we
could
have
be
a
thinking it's public user accounts.
cork board and everybody puts their current password on a sticky on the cork board. It's centrally managed.
But also user
Great.
accounts don't necessarily indicate internal users. They could,
I know, right? And it's,
Yeah.
you know, then is it service guy? I struggled with this too. I'm okay, again, lifting it. I just wanted to include it as a talking point based on, you know, Julia and mine's conversation. Does anybody have any issue if we pull this and focus on the other data elements to kind of assess access control maturity?
Can I put an option C on the table?
Okay,
That you split it and rephrase the question, do you manage internal user accounts? And the second question would be, do you manage external user accounts, public facing customer user accounts?
oh, interesting. What do people think about that?
So not centrally manage, but do you manage internal user accounts?
And do you manage your public external accounts?
If you don't have external user.
Then the answer would be no. I don't have any.
You get
Well,
0
They
points.
get 0.
Yeah, but we're trying to look at critical infrastructure, so there's very few.
It'll be neutral, it'll be
So
blank.
think about it, right? Hospitals, everyone's got
Yes.
a line card or something.
Why I was asking, because like I'm thinking water account. I only receive a bill in the mail and have this set
Oh.
a check.
So not applicable, you know, so the answers would have to vary differently, but it's still, it's good to know because we've got some varying degrees. And now this indicates public, you know, public facing access into systems versus internal facing access into systems. Just a thought. Like I said, it was C, it was not option A.
Yeah. I'm trying to be cognizant. I know we have 12 minutes, well, 11 minutes and change at this point, and we're still not through. So I want to try and get through this so that I can get working on building this out and we can release it before our next meeting. So do folks want to see it split or struck or leave as is? I got a struck. Anybody want to voice their perspective online?
I say strike.
Given timing strike.
Yeah, strike is
strike.
fine. Yeah, strike.
Option C got voted out,
That's okay.
but we're not gonna formalize it. We're gonna take a roll call vote, so everybody. Secretary. Any other comments in access control? If not, I'll jump to the next section. All right. Training and awareness. There were no comments in the area. We'll just pause here for a second to see if Erica.
Should we add frequency of cybersecurity awareness training? So yes, you do it. If so, how often?
Oh,
Or you could change that to your other use of things of annually or often. Just change it to a frequency and have no be at the end.
oh, interesting. So you're saying, let's go. What was our range that we ended up here?
More than annually.
Once. I've seen that. New user accession. That's it.
So we're saying. You provide regular cybersecurity training and awareness programs for all employees, more than annually, at least annually, less than annually, never. Yeah, that seems more meaningful to gauge maturity. That's a great point. Thank you.
So just flag it that you'll have to just adjust the question, that's all.
I think I understand that.
Okay.
Well. Oh wait, I should do something different since I used yellow already. Somebody else have a question? Oh, who's got a hand up? Oh, Colonel Kreider.
Hey, this is Hazel. At the risk of being the new person in the room, please let me know if this is not relevant, but I was curious if another topic of interest under training and awareness, and we discuss this here all the time in the Guard, and we were recently having a conversation about it, which is what made me think about it, is asking about if organizations have a mechanism in place to gauge the effectiveness of their cybersecurity awareness training programs. Because we talk here all the time about how training is fantastic and it's important, but how do we gauge whether it's effective or not? And I didn't know if that was a data point you were interested in, and if not, no worries, but thought it might be interesting.
That's an interesting one. Mr. Kaiser was nodding to the affirmative over here. The folks thinks that asking about, do they have a way of assessing training effectiveness makes sense to add?
You do that.
We run phishing tests and compare percentages post and, or period and post training.
I think from a cyber effectiveness, it's definitely a relevant question.
Not just you.
All right, so then we'll have. This is probably more just yes or no, right?
Correct.
All right. Anybody have any issues with adding that in? All right. We'll go down, if there's no others on that, we'll go to incident response. The one that's highlighted was again, one that I added as a result of that discussion, which was, would you be able to restore from backup all of your essential data and applications? Prove it. Yeah, well, it was an interesting, and this one was actually, I thought was a really thoughtful one from my discussions with her, right? It's like, even folks that may not be like super cyber literate can probably answer the question of like, do you have good backups and do you test them periodically? Right? Which is why we didn't ask, do you have good backups? Which is why I asked, would you be able to restore? Subtle for the tech folks, but still there. Anything in that section, thoughts about including that, any concerns with that question or how it's phrased or the responses?
I think that's a very important question.
Yep. Any others? If not, I'm gonna unhighlight it and consider it part of the survey. It's official, it's lost now to see it black and white. All right, security monitoring and detecting. This is the one that I thought might solicit a little bit of feedback. How quickly can you detect and respond to security incidents? I threw these out there. I think they're quite aggressive. The last one, who knows? I think that was appropriate. I think most people might be in that category because detection is where it all starts. This 4 hours, 1 day, and 1 week seem reasonable otherwise. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Eric.
Well, I mean, on that one, I mean, sort of right away, instantaneously, I think might be a great option. But on the one above it, do you use security monitoring tools? You might want to say tools or services. You know, just because if you're using a third-party SOC or something like that, you're not using your own tooling, right?
Yep. Good call.
I would just change who knows to unknown.
Oh, all right. A little bit of fun I had. Drop it from the record. All right. Those others theirs. I'm gonna go to vendor management. I think there was anything really, just 3 questions around how do you, I said third party. I think asking people like third party and fourth party might be going a little stretch in explaining, but no concerns there. Hands raised or anything, I will keep going. Compliance and regulation. Any questions, comments? And then the last one, continuous improvement. I struggled on this one as to whether or not it's relevant. But for, as you all know, right? A truly mature organization knows that it's not mature and is continuously trying to get better at what it's doing. And so that was my very thoughtful way of trying to get at that, but I don't know if we're gonna have many that can think that way. But I guess it doesn't hurt to include it, right? It's part of the base. So I'd be open to any thoughts that folks have. Take silence as you're ready for the meeting to be over. And the survey to be reviewed. And then the last one is just a free-form comments field that people can share with us. Any other things that we didn't ask about, but they might be willing to tell us about their cybersecurity program and organization.
The only thing I would recommend in the comment section is a reminder that this is anonymous.
Okay. I get it right?
I don't know.
You're good.
Can't see it from here.
Oh, geez. All right, at this point, I guess probably the best way to formalize this is if somebody can make a motion to accept the survey with these edits as the final for me to proceed with administering the survey, and I will do that. So if we can have someone make a motion.
Make a motion.
We have a motion in the room from, I think, Ciso Kaiser. Do we have a second out there?
A
Second.
second.
Excellent. All right, all those in favor of passing the motion so that we can start with the survey, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Excellent. Thank you. I appreciate everyone's work on this. I need to bounce over to my presentation to see how far behind we are. Get to website resources. That's okay. That'll be part of our main meeting. It'll give me some time to put some more thought into that. One last question. I included this. We talked about, we considered how do we start communicating with everyone in critical infrastructure? The listservs are like one directional. I was thinking of having a pilot by which the state hosted a Teams site by which we could get people to participate, if they wanted to voluntarily participate, where people could post questions, right? You know, crowdsource an understanding of the latest ISAC release, MS ISAC or something like that. I don't think we know enough about it to be able to have a motion at this time, so think about that. If there will be value in it, May meeting, we will pick that up and be part of the May meeting along with resources. Any questions or comments before we end today? I apologize for having gone so quickly because it feels like we had a lot to do. No questions, comments? It's 3:01. I apologize for keeping you one extra minute. Thank you all. And look forward to something from me in probably a month for preparation for the next meeting. And appreciate everyone's efforts. Have a good day.
Sean, do you need a motion to adjourn?
Thank you.
Yes.
Oh, I guess we probably do.
He was just gonna hang.
Sure.
Do you have a motion?
A
Got
second.
a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Thanks.
All those opposed?
Thank you.
I want to say, those opposed. Thank you. We don't follow like.
You gotta kill it. Still going, still recording.